but it's a very important symbolic gesture that the Greek foreign minister has gone to Turkey, because it shows that whatever the differences between the two countries, when it comes to rescuing desperate people, nothing should get in the way. Well, as soon as the disaster struck, we talked to the Turkish authorities about what they required, and they asked for a strong team stretched from across 14 fire brigades in Britain of 77 search and rescue specialists. And we dispatched them to Turkey with state-of-the-art equipment, and they've been very heavily deployed there. As far as Syria is concerned, there are very great challenges, not least the fact that there's only one major border crossing open, and that itself was closed for a period of time, partly because of the damage done to it by the earthquake. But we are getting aid through there. The senior British official at the United Nations is on the ground, and the United Nations is getting lorries across from southern Turkey into northern Syria. And specifically, your heartbreaking report that you just aired, we knew that the first responders would be the White Helmets, who were the civil defense group during the war. They have the capacity to help rescue people from under the rubble and help with shelter and warmth and food and some medicines. So we got money through to them very quickly indeed, and then we reinforced that when we realized the task that they were facing. And that money, British money, has been used to ensure that they have fuel for their vehicles and that they're able to get hold of blankets that are in the area and other support and look after the people who are in such dreadful jeopardy.
As the rescue operation shifts from the immediate emergency response to a longer term one, how does our support change with it?
Well, you're right that it does shift, but it won't shift yet. I mean, I remember in one of the other awful earthquake crises, they managed to rescue a little boy who was caught under the rubble after 9 days. So our rescue team, these 77 search and rescue specialists, will continue to work as long as there's any chance that people can be saved. But then you're right, it moves to a different point. It moves to a point where we need to get warmth and blankets and tents and shelter, hygiene kits, medical aid, food to people who are caught out in the open. And the temperature earlier this week was -11 at night. So it's incredibly cold. And I'm pleased to say that yesterday a flight left RAF Bryce Norton, and on that flight was a field clinic, medical team and medics, and 4,000 thermal blankets, 20 tons of equipment. And at about the same time, another flight left our stores in the UAE to go to Adana and on to Syria with tents and blankets. So we're doing our very best. And perhaps you'd allow me to say that the Disasters Emergency Committee appeal, which was launched just a couple of days ago, has reached unprecedented levels, with extraordinary support being shown from people across our country. They've raised within 48 hours no less than £53 million, which, as I say, is an unprecedented amount of support. And it underlines how it's in our DNA in Britain that we go to the rescue and support of people in less fortunate countries caught up in the disaster.
Indeed.
And it's not just the government, it's the British people across the country who do that.
Yeah, point well made. But there has been criticism that despite the best efforts, despite the best will in the world, I should say, that the international effort to actually send aid into Syria just hasn't been fast enough. Is it possible to adequately help the Syrian people without open access to the country?
Well, it's very difficult, and we've got these border crossings. There were 4 border crossings, but unfortunately a Russian veto at the United Nations has effectively closed 3 of them. So there's only one in operation now, and that itself at one point was down to 1 lane because of the earthquake damage. But Britain is pressing at the United Nations for these other avenues to be open, and of course the NGOs who the Disaster Emergency Committee appeal is supporting, some of these brilliant British charities which are on the ground there, they will receive support from the money that's been raised, and as well as from the British taxpayer through the government, and they can use other crossings, and they are doing so.
As the death toll continues to soar, and as mentioned, we're expecting that number to increase drastically in the coming days. There has been real criticism of Turkey's government response. President Erdogan defending his government, saying it's impossible to prepare for a disaster of this scale, which may well be true on the one hand, but his reaction to it, deciding to restrict access to Twitter after the earthquake, which stopped people trapped from accessing social media to alert rescuers and their families, it shows the government's response there is really lacking, doesn't it?
Well, the government's response, that is an issue you will have to take up with the Turkish government. But the response of Arab,
Is it an issue you'll be taking up with the Turkish government?
well, what we're taking up with the Turkish government is how we can help people caught in desperate circumstances and out in freezing conditions in the cold. And that is working well. The Turkish government organization called Arab, which deals with these things, is one with which we are continuously in touch. And what we're doing is getting through. And it's partly because there is good coordination from the Turkish government.
I do wonder whether our aid, however, should come with any restrictions. We're hearing reports of Turkish police detaining more than a dozen people since Monday over social media posts criticising how the government is dealing with the disaster. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that we must keep focused on how we get aid and support through to people who are caught in these desperate circumstances, as I have described. And we're not going to get distracted. We're going to work closely with counterparts in Turkey to deliver this support. That's what the British people want us to do. And we've seen through their extraordinary generosity that they're determined that we will go to the rescue of people caught out in this way.
This morning we heard Greece's foreign minister has arrived in Turkey in a show of support, which is interesting given that long-standing rivalry between the two countries. Are you planning a visit to Turkey?
Yes, I shall certainly go to Turkey as soon as it's appropriate, but it's obviously not appropriate to go in this critical phase of the rescue operation because foreign visitors just get in the way. So I shan't go yet, but it's a very important symbolic gesture that the Greek foreign minister has gone to Turkey because it shows that whatever the differences between the two countries, when it comes to rescuing desperate people, nothing should get in the way.